And we're recording.
Like a boss.
I finally figured it out. It only took 20 seconds. Like I just did this yesterday or anything. So Andrew, what's up, man? So real quick, so again, most of my friends are going to know who you are, but if you want to do a quick introduction, who you are, what you do, or as much as you want to get into.
I'm 29, spent 25 years born and raised in Georgia, moved down here to Florida for to broaden my professional horizons, put it that way.
So what you're a mechanic?
Yes. I was a dealership technician for about 8 years with Hyundai and Kia. I like to describe that job as doing high-level problem solving, given information with people of questionable knowledge. Nobody knows what the hell they're talking about when they say, well, my car's doing this.
It's like pulling teeth, trying to find out what there's really going on.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times somebody came in with just a real layman examples, like, I've got a noise coming from my back passenger seat, and it's like a bad hub bearing outside of the car on the left front. I just have no idea what they're talking about. So half the time, unless it was like a very specific complaint, I'd just dive into it myself and completely ignore what they were saying.
Yeah, well, I mean a little bit of that with EMS, like when I'm assessing a patient, because sometimes,
I'm sure.
Because sometimes when people they have no idea what's going on, and usually when you're feeling it, most people can describe what's going on fairly well. But sometimes, like somebody's be like, "Oh, I had the dizzies," and you're like,
okay. Like that blonde joke where she's like, "Doctor, everywhere I touch myself, it hurts. It hurts here. It hurts here. It hurts here. It hurts here." And the doctor grabs her finger and goes, "Yeah, your finger's broken."
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff too. Or my favorites are the ones who'll be like, "It hurts whenever I do this," and they'll just keep doing this, and I'll be like, "Okay, well, if you don't do that, are you okay?" And then they'll start moving immediately to see if they're okay when they don't move it. Like, well,
oh my God,
I had stop moving it. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I had a coworker that went on a test drive with a customer, and she was complaining about a noise, and they're out on the test drive, and she's like, "You got to do 60 miles an hour exactly. You have to have the radio off, and you got to hold your breath." I swear to you.
That's fantastic. Well, did they do it?
Yeah, and we're like, ma'am, radio off, hold your breath, dead silent. Like, unless you're driving a Rolls Royce, like, you're going to hear something.
That's funny.
Yeah. And if it's that faint, it is nothing to worry about. It is most likely road noise, wind noise, whatever. But I mean, it's unbelievable what kind of stuff people will come up with.
It's gotta be so frustrating too. What's nice though, like, so you deal with the customers, but then when it comes to the actual problem solving, it's just you and mechanical stuff, like you and the vehicle for the most part, right? So at least you get a break.
Usually when I was in the dealerships, I didn't deal with customers much at all unless I had to go on a road test with one of them. But I actually left the dealerships about 1.5 years ago, just because the flat rate pay scale is just it's a scam. Like, it was fantastic in the 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s, but the way you get paid hasn't changed, but the manufacturer's warranties have gotten so much longer, and it's supposed to be kind of a trade-off. So your customer pay time is supposed to make up for your warranty time. And I worked for Hyundai, so they've got a 10-year 100,000-mile powertrain warranty for the first owner, and if you were the second owner, you still got a second, third, fourth, fifth, you still got a 5-year, 60,000-mile warranty. So anything that went wrong under that, you got paid warranty times, which means you didn't get, you 9 out of 10 times got shafted.
Oh, it's like the warranty. So if you're working underneath the warranty, you're not getting paid at the same rate you would as you're working with someone that's outside the warranty?
Right. Because the manufacturer dictates the warranty time because they're the one paying it.
Oh, so they're the ones that set the price. So if they're making these long warranties and covering more stuff, they're not going to pay out as much because then they're going to be hemorrhaging money.
Exactly.
That's a bummer.
Exactly. And the warranty times, a lot of them were set just arbitrarily. They'd have some bean counter in an office saying, this should take you X amount of time. And then for some other stuff, they'd actually have a technician in a shop do the job and they'd time him. But they would never take his first attempt. He'd do the job 8, 9 times back to back to back to back. And then on the 10th time, they'd time him. And he was also working in an air-conditioned shop. He'd have all his tools laid out, and he would have a brand new car. So there's no broken bolts, there's no rust, there's no road grime, there's no anybody coming and talking to you and interrupting you or anything like that. So
they're setting these estimates for your work time based on some ridiculous standards because we've done it like 10 times. So it's like doing a puzzle you've done 13, 14 times in the past.
Yeah, you can.
So of course you're going to do it quicker. So they're going to put you at that.
Right.
Well, no one's going to be able to meet that the first time out of the bat, especially with a real vehicle. Right. So we don't have a ton of experience with cars. Like my dad owns a paint and body shop, so I've been around it when I was younger. And like my dad, like he writes estimates for auto body repair and stuff like that. And so I understand the frustration with like a bean counter saying like, well, hey, here's this and this, because there'd be like insurance writers that would come in, write an estimate and be like, well, this isn't realistic.
Right. And then the other thing you have to think about too is we didn't get paid for slack time, which is anytime we're not turning a wrench, if I'm standing at the parts counter, if I'm walking around in the lot trying to find a car, if I'm trying to find the kid that parked the car because he forgot to take the keys out of his pocket, we don't get paid for any of that. You get paid for the wrenches you turn on the car.
How do you even log that? That's so minute. Like, just because that's like seconds or minutes at a time.
You don't. You just don't get paid for that. You only get paid what you flag. So it's a double-edged sword. If there's a job that pays 4.5 hours and I do it in 2, I still get 4.5 hours.
Okay.
But if it's a job that pays 4.5 hours and it takes me 8, I get 4.5 hours.
Wow.
So yeah, it's one of those things where like I would go and there was no consistency. There was weeks where I turned 70 hours in 1 week where I was only physically clocked in and working for 40, 45 hours. And then there was other weeks where I'd be at work 40, 45 hours and I'd clock 25, 30. Because so you're at the mercy of what comes through the door.
And that was with the last place you worked?
No, that's every dealership.
Well, that's all of them now?
Pretty much. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions. Mom and pop shops may pay their guys hourly. It just depends. But a vast majority of car dealerships run the flat rate pay scale for their technicians.
Interesting. Now, do you work off like a 40-hour work week? Is there overtime rates or anything like that if you do go over those 40 hours, or is it just a flat rate for wherever you're working?
Your flat rate.
Wow.
Some places offered incentives, like if you made over 40, if you made over 45 hours, they give you like an extra 50 cents an hour retrospectively. If you made over 50, you got like an extra $1 an hour or something like that.
Okay.
But I mean, that's one of those things where it's just depends on the dealership.
Okay,
but
I gotcha.
Honestly, it doesn't make up for, I mean, unless you're consistently doing like 80-hour flag weeks, you're not getting what you would if you were getting like time and a half overtime of clock, like, per hour.
Right, like hourly wage kind of stuff, normal hourly wage things. What
Yeah.
got you into working on cars? Were you in the cars and you kind of went that route, or?
Yeah, I've just always been that way. I graduated high school, enrolled in college. I did a year of college, and I was going to transfer to UGA. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, if I wanted to go to be a doctor or a lawyer or an architect or something very specific, like I kind of had it in my head that I wanted to do like mechanical engineering, but it wasn't like a burning passion. And I was like, by that point, I'd already watched a bunch of people go to college and drop out after a year or two. And then now they've got $30,000, $40,000 of student loans and nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So I was just like, no, I'm gonna not do that. So I went to tech school for a year just to get a piece of paper that said I was halfway competent, and got a job changing oil and just worked my way up from there.
Right on, dude. Right on. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this was, we've been talking for a while. We had a group chat going on for years with our buddies, and it was you, Dylan, and then our other buddy, and we just happened to work out that we were all, yeah, cheers to him. It happened to work out that we we had to be on all ends of the political spectrum. Whereas
Right.
as we had one buddy that was more of the liberal side, and you're more conservative, and then I'm pretty much in the middle with libertarian. And so we always had this. We always been wanting for years to like sit
Hmm.
and talk and have like, okay, well, this is how. Because we would go in the group chat every day, like, hey, did you see this? And we would have
Yep.
conversations, rational
Yep.
human discussion
But
from all
it's
different
nice.
angles. And I wanted to have that.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I think it was really nice too, because what you say, all ends of the political spectrum, but I think all of us were pretty closely grouped together.
Yeah.
Like, I am more to the right, but I'm definitely more like center right. I think we had, center left, more dead up the middle. We didn't have like a, Trigglypuff far left. We also didn't have like a hardcore Bible thumping far right.
And I was never an anarcho-capitalist or
Yeah,
anything
exactly.
like that. But I think when we first started talking, we probably were further in our political corners. I think the process of talking like with each other too brought all of us a little more center as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, while we all identify with different political parties, like
Right.
communicating with each other, realizing that, okay, well, part of it might be maybe we're all more center than we thought in the first place, or maybe just talking to each other, we also realized that, well, maybe we're all more center than we all realized too. And of course, the issue is the idiots are the ones that scream loudest. And every party's got the idiots. You've got your Trigglypuffs, like you mentioned. You've got your Bible thumpers.
Yep.
It's got to be a better term for our alt-right. There you go. That's the one.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that I don't want to lump all Christianity into there. But
Yeah,
so you're alt-right, and then you're super progressive on the left, and then you've got your vermin supreme supporters, libertarians. That guy's a character.
Oh yeah,
and he's not doing anything favors for us. He's fun to watch.
Honestly, I'm kind of impressed he gets the boot to stay upright on his head like that.
Dude, okay, so Vermin Supreme, if you don't know who he is this this wackadoodle that's been running for office. Is he running for? I don't know what office he runs for. I don't know where it runs for it, but he's basically this. He looks like a homeless man that wears a rubber boot on his head, and he runs around talking about stuff.
And about 100 neckties.
Yeah, he looks like he's just collecting like the dumpster outside of Men's Warehouse all over his body. And he's been, bro, like I randomly turned on the Libertarian National Debate a couple of weeks ago, and he was on the panel.
No.
He was on the panel. I'm watching this for like a good 20 minutes. And like, there's a couple of guys who have decent ideas, and they're saying things, but then you've got Vermin Supreme. And I'm
you remember
my
the
party's
too
a
damn
mess.
high.
Yes.
You remember that
dude,
guy?
My party is a mess, bro. It's like well, it's weird. Libertarianism has such a wide umbrella, and I mean, there's crazies and everything, but we seem to pick up a lot of the strays.
The home for the homeless.
Yeah, it really is, which is a noble thing to do, but we also need to get our shit together.
Yeah, and put them in the back room. Like, okay, you can be here, but you can't be out front.
Right. It's like, okay, listen, like you've got valid ideas, but you're a little more eccentric, and we need to realize that yes, you're part of the party, you're an important part, but we can't have you in the spotlight. We're trying to get some legitimacy.
Yeah.
So do you think
I wanted to circle back to something that you were saying, because it kind of got me thinking about how you mentioned that when we all first started talking, we were kind of a little further back in our political corners. And this is something that has occurred to me before that I haven't been able to articulate as well as I'd like to, but I always kind of liken it to playing tug of war, where you're really more in the middle, but one side pulls a little bit and then the other side pulls a little more to counteract the first pull. And then you just keep pulling harder and harder and harder, and you start moving further and further and further away from each other just to try and balance out the other side's pull. Like, I still have this knee-jerk reaction to defend, more Republican positions, even if it's something I don't necessarily agree with, because I feel like it's necessary to counterbalance the far left. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, I was
Even if it's
raised.
even if it's something that I'm not like really on board with, because I am like deep down, it's like I really don't give a shit what you do as long as you're not negatively impacting anybody else and it doesn't involve diddling kids, Joe Biden.
Dude,
I'm
did you?
sorry,
We'll get to that too because there are some new documents that came out today. I want to talk about too. But anyways, look, but what you're saying makes sense to me because I get it. Like I grew up in more very conservative family.
Mhm.
It's like my dad's side is very conservative. My mom's side is more on the liberal side, but we weren't around them as much. So it's mostly like Fox News being played.
Right.
My best friend's parents are very conservative. So that's kind of like the climate I grew up in. So like I'll even note like now, like I even now for as long as I've been holding that gold banner for the Libertarian Party, there are times where like I'll read something and I'll see like a D next to somebody's name, and I'll immediately like my first inclination is to dislike what they're doing or try to find the flaws in it. And for the Republican side, the same thing even. Or even on the Republican side, sometimes I'll look for the flaws where there might not be because I want to prove I'm in the middle. You know? So it's like I'm in this weird kind of in between where it's like it's really, really hard to just be like, all right, take the red and blue out of it.
There's a lot
look
of
at the ideas
overcorrection
itself.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's such a sad state that we're in. There's so much of this toxic tribalism where I can't just say this person has good ideas. Well, yeah, but they're this or they're that. And yet you can't separate party affiliation from the actual things that they're saying, which I mean, it's a bummer because there's so much good and bad on both sides.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there are some things that Ted Cruz does I think are ridiculous. There are things where I'm like, okay, I'm behind you on this one. I like how you're trying to hold Google accountable for stuff.
Right.
I mean that's the same kind of thing Tulsi Gabbard was doing, trying to hold Google accountable and hold YouTube for like the censorship stuff like that, manipulating data. Which they lost that lawsuit.
The one where they throttled her after her debate performance.
I don't know if it was Google specifically. I saw a headline, so I'm talking a little bit on my butt. But the headline I saw was Tulsi Gabbard, and I don't know if it's Ted Cruz suing or somebody else. Tulsi Gabbard and somebody else lost their lawsuit against like Google and I guess Alphabet and YouTube because they still private platforms, so they can still choose what content. And that's a tough one for me too because I'm very much I'm very much about it's a private company, do your thing, but But when it comes to Google, though, if you're manipulating search results to promote different candidates and swaying elections, at what point is this a public interest?
Yeah,
it's a sketchy. It's a conversation that's really complicated,
really
and it's tough too because dum dums like us are talking about like we know what we're talking about.
All I know is there's definite consequences for that kind of behavior. But I also, for a fact, know that I don't trust anybody in government with the power to regulate that.
Right. That's the big slippery slope. Because as soon as we start saying what's not or not okay, well, who's going to enforce it?
Right.
Well, it's going to be the government. Well, do we really trust them to enforce things? And I mean, look at the powers that they every time they get emergency powers over anything, do they ever scale it back? No. Fuck no. No. These powers, no one ever gets emergency powers back. They keep growing and growing and growing. And then it's like comes down to healthcare. Like for me, like I'm not a fan of the single payer healthcare idea because I just don't think our government can effectively do it. I don't trust our government to take care of me and my loved ones and other Americans. I've seen. I mean, we have single payer healthcare in the VA, and there have been well, some are great, but there have been there are a bunch of VAs in Pennsylvania. They're basically actively killing people through neglect.
Yeah, I think Arizona too.
Yeah, and then there's numerous stories where the VA, I mean, they've paid out millions and millions in settlements and malpractice. And then I worked with a doctor at a private hospital in an ER, and he went to work for a VA, and he was told by doctors who had been there for a while, it's like, hey, slow down. Our jobs are all safe. You're going too fast. And he ended up leaving and going back to work for a private hospital. So it's really tough because it's really jacked up that we have a profit-driven healthcare system, but I don't know of any other way to really make it effective to give that kind of care to people. I think there needs to be a balance for it. I think insurance and the regulations are a big problem with it. Well, a big problem I see all the time too is actually Medicaid and Medicare. And again, I'm in healthcare. I don't do a lot of the billing stuff. I know that a lot of like protocol and the way I document stuff, because like I'll run a call that takes 20 minutes to run the whole thing from start to finish, to hospital, passing off patient care to the ER, 20-minute call. Then I'll spend like an hour documenting it, because there's so much regulation on documentation from the federal government, because you have to go through these certain things to get reimbursed, or you have to try these certain criteria or do these certain things, otherwise you won't get reimbursed. That's why I really liked like the cash clinic ideas.
And one thing that I've kind of wrestled with is, well, first off, we don't have the personnel to have a single payer healthcare system. I mean, the ERs, the doctors and everything, there's already wait times to try and get an appointment if you want to see a doctor, Now you add however many more millions of people that are currently uninsured to that, and you're not going to be able to get in to see a doctor if you just completely take out the logistics of can we pay for it? We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough, PAs. We don't have enough people in the medical field to be able to take care of the entire United States population.
Well, I know there's
not feasible.
I can't.
And the other thing is, like, I think that, there needs to be some kind of incentive to take care of yourself.
Right.
Like, I think we need to put a lot more emphasis on wellness and preventative medicine so that people aren't circling the drain by the time they get to the medical professional, and then it costs you 10 times more.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have people that they sit at the desk all day at work, then they come home, they sit on the couch all night and watch TV, they're stuffing pizza and Funyuns down their face, and they're not doing anything at all to help themselves. Like, I just, there's a lot of private insurance companies that if you're a smoker, you pay more.
Right.
You're higher risk.
Mm-hmm.
They'll do a physical, and if you're in good health, you'll actually get lower rates. So, if we have a single payer system, somebody that's in good health is gonna pay for somebody that is in extremely poor health. And I sympathize with people that have, it's through no fault of their own. They have a genetic disorder, or they have pre-existing conditions that aren't their fault. But there are plenty of people out there that are just morbidly obese because they'd rather eat Oreos than get on a treadmill,
Yeah, and the sad thing is, like, a lot of, I don't know if it's just my anecdotal experience from the areas that I've worked, but it seems like a lot of the people who take the least amount of care of themselves tend to be on these government-funded healthcare plans like Medicaid and that kind of thing. So it's tough. So for that, so we were talking about there weren't enough doctors. I had to Google some stuff to make sure. I was tapping in the background if you heard that. I want to make sure. So I ended up pulling up here. So I remember there's a cap on how many physicians are allowed to go into residencies.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up pulling up a PDF from the University of California Health talking about a residency cap limits the supply of physicians. So it says here, there's a bottleneck that prevents more physicians from entering the workforce. It's the cap on Medicare-funded residency positions. This cap, established by Congress in 1997, has remained unchanged despite significant overall growth in the U.S. population, and blah, blah, blah. So basically, it looks like, and again, this is just what I'm pulling up here.
Right.
And so the idea behind us talking to that group chat in the first place was we just wanted to be able to have, because everyone's talking anyway. Everyone's going to be, whether or not you're a mechanic or you're a paramedic or you're whatever, you're an accountant. Like, everyone's having these conversations anyway because they affect what's going on. So you and I were talking about before we started recording how, and something I touched on in the past too, is like how if I'm going to talk about something, I want to know it inside and out. I want to be thorough. I want to be on it. And I'll get into this mode where I'm like, well, there's so much I don't know about this. I shouldn't talk about any of it.
Yeah, you just get information paralysis.
Right. So I think there needs to be a way that we can start talking about something and also at the same time saying, I don't know everything about this.
It's the Rogan
Here's
approach.
what I've found.
It's the Rogan approach. You're just like, look, I'm a fucking idiot. I'm probably a little overly cocky. You know, I think through these things in my spare time. I'm not just like speaking the first thing that comes to mind, but I don't have all the answers. I've got a full-time job just like everybody else. I got bills to pay. I don't have time to sit and just educate myself 25 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you can think logically about things. And that's kind of where I raised that concern about the number of physicians we have. Is just logically, like, you don't have to be an expert to understand that, you know, just for simplicity's sake of numbers, let's say you've got 10 doctors and 100 people. Those 10 doctors could ostensibly take care of those 100 people, you know, assuming you've got from infant to old age, you know, all the wide range of health, all of that. Those 10 doctors could probably take care of those 100 people. With
a badass nursing staff, yes.
Absolutely. Nurses are the unsung.
Friends are start screaming at me.
Yeah, absolutely. Nurses, you ladies and gentlemen, are the unsung heroes. So please don't misconstrue my very basic example.
No, I just want to show some love that way. You're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Andrew hates nurses.
Hey, my mom's an X-ray tech, so I've got some ties to the medical field.
Yeah, buddy.
So I have to show my what's the term? I have to validate where my opinions are coming from, check my privilege and all this, that, and the other. Anyway, so 10 doctors, 100 people. Now let's bump that up. We've got the same 10 doctors. Now they've got to look after 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Quality of care is going to go down till eventually people are just dying because they can't get to a doctor. You know,
that's a huge issue with a lot of the doctors now. Like, their offices, they accept a lot of private offices, like primary care physicians. They want to stop accepting like Medicaid because there's so much documentation and so much else that goes into it that's not patient care. Right. And so little they actually get reimbursed on and paid back for. It's like, for them to actually turn a profit and be able to keep the doors open and pay for everything they need and their staff and everything like that, not to mention the leasing and everything else, to reach all their overhead, they have to see a lot more patients. So they're seeing a lot more patients. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. So you're jamming them in a shorter time. You're not getting the kind of patient interaction you need to actually take care of somebody. You're looking at a chart, you're reading it over, you're walking in 10 minutes, turn your head, cough, all right, cool, no hernia. Here, take this script and go. But then you're already on to the next one. You're working through lunch. Like, it's happened so many places.
It happened to me. I went to a doc in the box last year because I got the man flu, and it put me on my ass. I don't know what it was, man. I get sick very rarely, but whatever this was put me on my ass. And after about 4 days and not feeling any better, I went to Centricare just because, I mean, I have insurance. It was just, this is terrible, and you're probably going to crucify me for this, but I've lived in Florida 4 years now, and I still have not gotten like a primary care physician. So I didn't have anybody to make an appointment with.
Yeah, I don't have
one. I sat in the waiting room. I get into the office. The doctor comes in. She's talking 400 miles an hour. I see her for 6 minutes. She gives me a script for some antibiotics, and then $200 later, I'm out the door.
Yeah.
Just
quick. Oh, and what's like, so many people will see that and be like, oh, that's the result of a for-profit driven healthcare system. But really, if you look at it, a lot of times, a lot of situations that I've seen, or at least been told about, it seems like this comes from having so much of the patients being on Medicaid or being from this this single payer service, where you have to increase the volume because you're not. So it seems like if anything, government's making healthcare worse in this case. Where if we kind of let them out, like cut them out a little more. Like, so I talked about cash clinics a minute earlier. I know I sent this stuff to the. Sorry, my screen froze for a second. Mine
did too.
Right,
no, I just
cool.
Soapbox for just 2 seconds, but I mean.
Oh no, you're good. Go for it.
The government has very rarely taken over something and made it better. The government takes something over, they fuck it up, and then their solution is more government.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that. It was Ron Paul was on. It was either the Colbert Report or the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. This was years ago. This was probably when I was still in high school. But Ron Paul was on there, and he was saying, he was like, I want to get rid of every government agency. And
What if it's when he was
like,
running in like 2012?
Yeah. So no, I think it was before that.
8 maybe?
It might have been 08.
I graduated in 08 from high school.
It might have been 08.
Before I knew what was going on. Anyway, sorry.
Either way, yeah. So there, and the hosts, whether it was Colbert or Stewart, they were like just naming things off. They're like EPA, FBI, CIA, ATF, and he was just like, eh. And I'm like,
cut it.
Cut it all. Like everything they touch, they fuck up. And that's the other thing that nobody's ever been able to answer me. Like, again, I don't have the answers to all of this, but what I do know is nobody's been ever been able to give me a satisfactory answer to this. So I don't care if you're on the left, right, center, up, down, northeast, southwest. But if I ask somebody, I'm like, is the government corrupt? Yes. Do you trust the government? No. Is the government wildly inefficient? Yes. Should they be in charge of your healthcare then?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
If those are the positions you hold, if you don't trust government, why would you want to give them more power over you?
And that's so funny too. It's like, I mean, look at everyone on the left is railing against Trump and everything that he's doing, but then, well, we got to get this person in or that person in. This person's terrible. He's abusing all this power. It's like, well, the presidency, that office shouldn't have that much power in the first place.
Agreed.
Like, it shouldn't actually matter that much who the president is. What it should matter is who your local representatives are, your Senate, your congressmen and women. That's who actually should be mattering.
Yeah.
The president's a figurehead. Like, this job has gotten blown way out of proportion to the point where now it's like I forget the person I was trying to make, but it's like master of the universe. It's ridiculous. And everyone else, the people who really matter locally, are the ones who are getting lost in all the BS. And it's like, we're only playing this game on a national scale, but the entire thing was built from the ground up to represent the small scale, the local, the counties, the cities, the states. Smaller government doesn't mean we need to just chop the balls off of everything. It means we need to take care of problems locally.
Bring the accountability closer to home.
Right. Well, it's like everyone's raving against Governor DeSantis for Florida for the way he was opening stuff back up.
Right.
Where, we have Cuomo in New York keeping everything locked down, and it's like, well, those are vastly different states. You can't compare the two. The populations in New York and Florida, these are not the same. These could be different countries as far as climate goes and geography goes.
New York City versus upstate New York are two entirely different scenarios.
Right. You can't have a one-size-fits-all policy for all these areas. Now, if a state wanted to do, I don't know if it's feasible. I'm talking on my butt here, like I always do. But let's say if New York City wanted to provide health care for all of its residents, okay, maybe they could probably make that work. Maybe, maybe not. But other people aren't going to want to pay.
Well, that's what Romney
for those
did
populations.
in Massachusetts.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, Romney Care. That was a big thing when he was running, right?
I didn't.
I know it wasn't like a full scale single payer, but it was something along those lines.
Like a opt-in health insurance for all the people that bought into it or something like that.
Something like that. But it was that's the thing. Like if you want to do something at a state level, then it's the people of that state that get to make the decision, and it doesn't affect anybody in the neighboring states.
Right.
So if you don't like the policies of where you are, you can either A, vote different people in, or B, you can move somewhere that has the policies that you like.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter who sits in the White House.
Totally agree.
But here's something that I'd be kind of interested to get your take on. With let's say hypothetically that we did go full single payer. I mean, complete abolishment of any kind of private healthcare, any kind of private insurance. what level of care are you entitled to? Like if let's say, just for this little thought experiment, let's say that, we acknowledge that healthcare is a right, which I disagree with, but just for sake of argument, let's say that healthcare is a right, a human right, Healthcare is a human right.
Oh, Bernie's back.
So, man, I'm glad he dropped out, just for the sheer fact that I don't think I could listen to that man talk for 8 years. Even if the words coming out of his mouth were 100% in line with everything I agreed with, I couldn't listen to that voice for 4 years.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There's certain times I listen to Trump and I think that too. I'm like, oh, this is rough.
Yeah,
this is rough.
Yeah, Trump's manner of speaking drives me crazy.
Yeah, he just sounds.
He's so hyperbolic.
Yeah, he blatantly lies about figures and jack stuff up, and it's like he'll say something that everyone says, oh, he was just joking. It's like, oh, I can't tell. I can't tell if he's blatantly lying or if he's joking. I feel like sometimes it's both. But when he's funny, he's funny. Like when there's the women's march and he tweeted a great day to go for a walk.
Right.
Like that's funny. Like he's funny when he wants to be, but
he is.
Be funny
he
a lot
is.
of
So
times. But
anyway,
so back to so your question is like, so what? Let's say healthcare is a human right. What level of care are we entitled?
What level of care are you entitled to? Like, is everybody in the United States entitled to Cadillac primo healthcare? Like, do you get the cutting edge, super expensive treatment across the board? Or like, how does that work? Because, and forgive me, I can't cite this, but I think something like 50% of new medical patents worldwide come out of the United States.
I do know it's a substantial amount.
It's a substantial amount. So our healthcare, yes, is more expensive, but a huge amount of the innovation in the medical field is coming from us, and it is partially like we can get into the big pharma and how evil they are and price gouging and all that other stuff, which absolutely happens. But you can't deny that with a capitalist, profit-driven incentive program does fuel innovation. And a lot of the reasons that a lot of these other countries can have a single payer healthcare is because they're not sinking all of this money into R&D to develop new treatments. And, so it's just one of those things where it's like, the only reason we have the level of healthcare, and again, I could be totally wrong, just throwing that out there, but it seems to me that the only reason that we have the level of healthcare that we have is because it's 2020 and we've been working towards this forever. I mean, go back to 1920 and look at the level of care that you were eligible for in 1920 versus what we can do today.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things that I just don't understand where the line is drawn.
I mean, that's a good question. I don't think I could answer that, because it's like, for me as a healthcare provider, I want someone to have access to whatever it is that they want that might potentially save or improve their lives. But there's also the issue of, supply rationing. Like who is the best fit for that? I mean, look at even like organ donor list.
That's
like
exactly what I was gonna say.
We don't have the resources for everyone to get that kind of thing. So let's say if we declare, so back to the healthcare being a human right thing, I want everyone to have it. I don't believe that healthcare is one of like an inalienable human right, because no one has a right to my labor. That's slavery.
Exactly.
No. Should everyone? Should everyone in like a first world nation have access to quality healthcare? Fuck yeah, we should. Is it your right? See, when you put it in that kind of terminology, it starts getting squirrely. So is it a human right? I'm going to say no, because if the healthcare is part of my labor, then no, you don't have a right to my efforts. No one has a right to my labor.
Exactly.
But is it something that people should have? Totally. And I've dedicated my entire life to giving it. So obviously I'm on board with that. And again, me and the anti-single payer healthcare thing is mostly because I just don't think government can do it. I don't think it's feasible. I think care will
Absolutely not.
suffer,
Yeah.
especially in the United States. Other nations may be able to do it well, and that's awesome. Did you one of the first episodes I did was really the first episode. It was rough. The audio wasn't good. But I was talking with my friend from Norway,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and things there, like they have it's a much smaller, much more homogenous society versus the United States. And
Right.
so yeah, you have people who are paying higher taxes there, but it's much more of a family kind of thing. And people there are a lot more active, it sounds like. And then
Yeah.
they realize that they're all pitching in to help out each other out, so they want to take care of themselves more too.
Right.
At least that's the gist I've been getting from them, and we do not have that here.
Right.
So that, while it works in some places, is not going to work here. And as for like what level of care, like back to, let's say healthcare is a right. Okay, well, I need a new heart. Well, do I have a right to take someone else's? Do I have a right to take someone's kidney?
Right.
And this might be on the hyperbolic side of things, but like once you start going down this, I'm entitled to someone else's stuff, it's a slippery slope. And
Right. I
yeah,
mean,
I'm maybe
you have
jumping
to
right to an
follow
extreme
it.
example, but let's
You
follow
have
it
to follow
to
something
even,
to its logical conclusion.
or even the illogical one, just in case, because you don't expect those ones. Those are the ones you got to worry
Right.
about. If we
Yeah.
just made policy and procedure and stuff like that based off of what we think is probably not going to happen, well, we have to think about the worst case scenarios.
Right. The
These need to
unintended
be considered.
consequences.
And you can call me a fearmonger, call me crazy, or whatever else, but like we have to think about the worst possible outcomes so we can prepare for it. Because if you don't prepare for it, guess what happens? You've got a pandemic going everywhere. Everyone's coughing. There's no masks available. You're out of advance. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that
Exactly.
kind of gets back to the supply and demand thing too. It's like, well, what? Like we recently or currently still are facing a national worldwide crisis. So what was the first thing they did to start getting more supplies when we started running out? They pulled back regulations on private industry, and they started putting out stuff to now we have more. Elon freaking Musk is making ventilators and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we
So does
have,
Ford.
right, and you have I can't tell you how many like small breweries even are converting to
Yeah.
making sanitizer, stuff like
Yep.
that. So these are all private companies
Yeah.
that are of their own volition changing their manufacturing during the time of crisis. This is all private business. So
If you can remove a regulation in a time of crisis, 9 out of 10, it probably wasn't necessary in the first place.
probably not. There's some that definitely do, especially the testing standards for
Yeah.
like vaccine
9 out
and
of
stuff
10.
like that.
9 out of 10.
But there's a balance to it. Because I would say let's look at the regulations that we have in place, the ones that we take away during emergencies, and let's see, okay, which ones are actually good for safety and which ones just kind of slow stuff up. Because so much of the issue I see people have with capitalism is actually crony capitalism when it gets involved in
Yeah.
politics and creates
Right.
regulations that snuff down the little guy or make it
Right.
harder for other companies to compete. Like monopolies, like people say all these companies, they create these monopolies and it's all capitalist greed and that. Like that. Natural monopolies rarely ever exist. Usually a monopoly exists due to government regulation. They'll come in, these companies will lobby, they'll pump money into politicians, and they will get regulations and rules that make it more difficult for other companies to compete.
Right.
I mean, now on the flip side of that, I think there should be antitrust laws that prevent monopolies from just buying up all the smaller competition. There are certain instances where we need to make sure we don't create that environment. But on the flip side,
look at
on
our,
the one hand,
national media. Look at our national media. It's like what, 3 or 4 companies that own virtually every major news outlet.
Right. What was that thing?
You
Operation
can't tell me
Nightingale?
there's no conflict of interest.
Yeah. Well, just remember that the video going around, like I don't know what it's called, Operation Nightingale or something, where they showed like small news agencies from across the nation all saying the exact same script. Remember that went around? So it's well, I mean, it's obvious just looking at the media now. It's like you've got companies that are all, I mean, they're companies. Yeah, they're media companies. They're all towing different lines. And by different, I mean like most of it's a left-wing line, and then you got a couple of people on the right-wing line. There's not a lot of just pure objective journalism out there anymore. And that is an unfortunate side effect of like being profit-driven too. But
I think part of it too.
Like, where did that all go wrong?
I will answer that for you. The 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
I think that's where we fucked up.
Yeah.
Because now you don't have somebody just presenting the facts to you. You know, if it was down to 1 hour a night on the nightly news or whatever, you present the facts to people and let them make what they will of it.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have a 24-hour news cycle, and they have to fill all that time, and it turns into editorializing everything. It's not somebody presenting the news. It's you have a figure that you get emotionally attached to, whether it's a Don Lemon or a Bill Maher or a Sean Hannity or a Tucker Carlson. You that's your guy, and you go to him for his opinions. It's not about the news anymore. It's about this guy or this woman or whoever, Rachel Maddow, any of them. You've got your person, and I think it just fuels the editorializing of everything because they've got to fill all this time. So then you end up with cult of personality. You end up with just opining about, whatever you think is going to get you the most views, the most revenue and ad dollars. And I think it's largely due to the fact that we have so much time, or that the news outlets have so much time in a day to fill.
Makes a lot of sense.
I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, I think you're right too. Well, that and so much of human behavior itself. Like, I mean, if you look at like algorithms for Facebook or social media, it's like if you look at like content that gets people angry or upset gets way more attention and clicks than stuff that's like happy. Like if I'll look and see like a video of like the most adorable puppy doing puppy crap, and then I'll be like, oh, there's some likes and some hearts, stuff like that, a couple comments. But you look at like a video, like someone's posting like that pandemic video, or anything that's controversial, people just get it'll have 400 comments. People get livid, up in arms. Twitter is a complete freaking dumpster fire.
I won't even venture
It's such a mess, dude.
You know what's interesting though about that is, I don't know if you're aware of, I think it was Ari Shafir that did an experiment about whether or not he can manipulate the Facebook algorithm.
Yeah, it was either him or it's one of our Joe Rogan's friends. But yeah,
so
where he just did like purely puppies. Was it?
Yeah, and then that's all they got.
Yeah.
So people, the algorithm just plays up whatever you gravitate towards. So if you're the kind of person that wants to just sit and bitch and moan and argue all the time, it's going to continue feeding that because that's what gets you engaged. That's what keeps you on the phone or on the laptop. That's what keeps you commenting. That's what keeps you scrolling past the ads they're trying to sell. So it is partially on Facebook, but it's also partially on the end user. If
it's
that's
on
what
us
you want
for
to do
sure.
with your time, if that's what you want to do with your time, then that's what's going to keep coming up.
Well, it's like we have it so easy. Like there's nothing like for the most part, your everyday life, there's not a lot of struggle in it. Like you're not really getting upset or like fighting against anything. So like our bodies for so long, like this level of comfort is relatively new to humanity. So like we're in a very, very, civilized next level kind of society, but we're still working with like hunter-gatherer brains. And as much as this, as much as I rip off Joe Rogan all the time with this podcast, the whole thing, but I mean, homeboy's right. Like we need more kind of engagement. Cause I mean, if you like think about like a week where you don't work out, like, are you not more like just angsty and you get angry at shit like that? Like for the day today, like today I hadn't worked out really much since I moved like a week ago. And I started noticing like there are little annoyances in my day that are starting to really piss me off. And I'm like, oh, so then I worked out, 20-minute workout. It's half-ass even. And I'm like, I feel great right now. You
don't have the energy to be upset about bullshit.
Right. Well, it's so much of it too. I mean, my entire life, like I look at stuff because I mean, like I've been an EMT, a paramedic. There's actual stakes involved with my life. So like most people say like, oh, he's super chill. And I'm like, well, I know what's actually worth getting your panties in a bunch over. I know what's worth actually getting upset over. Like this is low stakes stuff. And so many people. So we have a problem with people not having a lot of daily challenges. We're not using this energy, the survival energy that we need. So we just get angry about everything. So like, that's an issue with us too. So then you're right. The algorithms just seem to fit into wherever
you're not worried about getting eaten by a lion. while
Yeah.
you're trying to catch a fish for dinner, you know?
Right. Or we're not worried where our food's going to come from.
Yeah.
You know,
I
we're
mean,
not.
in what other time in history have the poorest people had the highest level of obesity?
Right. Right. You know, I mean, and part of that's there's plenty of jacked up parts about that too, with like food manufacturing, that kind of thing. We look at just the
Yeah, I
face
mean,
value, but just the face
yeah.
value, like people like I see there's a homeless guy that I told him I didn't have cash. He gave me he had a card reader.
You shitting me?
Yeah, dude, downtown Orlando, man. I told
Oh
this guy
my
I did
god.
the whole hey, sorry, man, I don't have any cash on me. He's like, oh, it's good. He popped up a freaking iPhone with a card reader on it. I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? I mean, that's not to say we don't have big problems with homelessness and stuff like that and mental
Yeah,
health,
absolutely. But I mean, when
but
even
my
the
God,
homeless have iPhones.
right, right. So it's we're in some really really strange times, dude.
Yeah.
And it's like
You know,
it's like
I've actually seen something similar. I was at a Wendy's one day having lunch, and there was a group of homeless people that came in specifically to charge their devices.
yeah, I've seen that
They
too.
just hung out in the dining room charging up. They had iPhones, they had Bluetooth speakers, they
Dude,
had
San Francisco, there's places
power
where you
banks.
can't, you have to go in and buy stuff. I mean, to use a restroom, obviously, but there's places where you have to buy something to be able to use, like charging stations and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I see it. San Francisco's a mess. Cool city, but just
Dude, when you have an app to indicate where the human shit is on the sidewalk,
it's bad. So like I heard all those stories, then I went and well the first time I went was I was flying in. It was years ago, but it was like while I'm in the air from like one side of from East Coast going to the West Coast. They federally legalized gay marriage. I was coming in for the weekend, so I guess every Saturday or Sunday, almost every weekend, there's like a big pride parade. But there's a big parade that day when gay marriage is federally legalized. So
oh, sure.
I didn't notice a lot of the mess there because I was partying too hard. But but like the next time I went, like 2 years ago, it was just like I'm thinking, oh, like these poop apps and stuff, that's gotta be exaggerated. But then I'm looking around, I'm like, fuck. Like there's so much cool stuff here that's just ruined by just
Yeah.
poor policy, and it's a shame. It really is
Yeah.
a big
It
shame. But
really
it's like
is. I mean, it's sad, but I
well, it's like I
mean,
always say, man, how many times have I said it's like, you know, hard times create hard people. Hard people create good times. Good times create soft people. And then soft
soft
people
people
create
create hard
hard.
times.
Yep.
Yep.
And guess where we're at?
Yeah. We are
Like
right on the edge.
we're on that transition phase again.
Yeah.
So, but well, dude, we said like an hour.
Oh shit.
Yeah, man,
Holy
time
moly.
flies, dude.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're not kidding.
that's awesome, man. So I'm glad we did this,
Yeah.
dude. And
Yeah, me too.
we'll definitely do more of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how to close these. I've only had like 6 of these done so far. But is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, just good to finally sit down and do this. And whenever you want to do it again, just let me know.
Absolutely, man.
If we don't get a mob of I don't know, I'll be interested to see how this is received, because I don't think we really went too far one way or another.
We didn't. The people are probably gonna extrapolate, especially when they see the big white Republican with his arms out, throwing his male privilege all over the place.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Oh,
Well,
you,
hey, just
you
for the
monster!
record,
And how dare I give you a platform?
just for the record, I'm only half white, so don't get on me too much.
There you go. You're only half privileged.
Exactly.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much,
All right,
man. I'll
man.
talk to you again soon.
Take it easy.
Bye.
See ya.
I don't know how to stop recording.